that for more Microsoft webcasts, you can go to Microsoft.com/webcast. Thanks again for joining us on today's Momentum webcast, delivering business intelligence through SharePoint Server 2007. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Pej Javahari. Pej, you have the floor.
Thanks, Phil. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you today to talk to you about how you can deliver BI through SharePoint Server 2007. As we get going, I just wanted to remind everybody that this is the third part of a 5-part webcast series on business intelligence from Microsoft. If you haven't had a chance to check out the other 2 sessions, we had one last week, which dived really deep into scorecarding capabilities and the value of what scorecard and guided analytics brings to your organization, as well as an overview of business intelligence. And these are the links are available within the deck, so it can give you quick access to those webcasts if you haven't had a chance to take a look at them. Before I get going, I did have some polling questions, and I would ask you to take a minute to quickly select the survey that best identifies your role within your organization. This gives me a good opportunity to understand the people who are participating and talk about the things that are most relevant to you. So it looks like we have a lot of people who are in the IT department joining us today, as well as from sales and other departments, including finance. Thank you for that. The next question is, what areas are you currently interested in? This could be things that projects that you got on the go right now, various other capabilities that you're looking to deploy, technologies that you're interested in, etc. I'll just give a few minutes for that. Looks like we have a lot of people interested in dashboards and a little bit of data warehousing and reporting. That's great. My next polling question is around which performance management or business intelligence technology from Microsoft are you currently using today? Looks like we have a lot of people who have deployed SQL Server or have that up. A little bit more of SharePoint there. That's great. It's very exciting for me to hear. Some people have already deployed Performance Point, which is also great. We'll have a lot to talk about how you can bring these things together, and Excel. And the last question that I have for you, survey, is what other technologies are you using today within your organizations? And this is good for us to know so we can show how we can interoperate with those technologies and you can maximize your investments across Microsoft and these other technologies that are available. So we have a lot of business objects users, a couple of Hyperion Cognos, and others. Great. Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time to fill out these quick surveys. Let's get back to our presentation and get things going. Okay. So what I thought we'd spend the hour on is talking about some of the challenges that you have, and I just want to use this in a way to frame the conversation that I'm about to have with you on how you can leverage SharePoint Server 2007, along with your other investments in third-party technologies, as well as from Microsoft, and how you can bring these things together, as well as some slides that has resources available. So how can you get started today? There's a large number of people who said they don't have a business intelligence solution that are being used, and I'm taking that you may have SharePoint already, and this will provide you with some concepts that you can quickly get going, whether you're an Office user using Excel, how you can share that information, whether you built reports using reporting services, and how you can tie that information to SharePoint and provide more people to be able to access that content. So let's talk about the current way people are using technology and what are some of the requirements across your users and the business. And I like to frame this conversation into 2 groups. One is obviously the users who constantly need access to information. They want to get access to the data in real time, which means ASAP, right, as quickly as possible. Be able to mine that information to use it within their projects or campaigns or business tasks that they need to get done. And they want to be able to use it in a way that's fitting for their purposes. So it has to be in the right format, it has to be in the right context, etc. Then there's what we need to do within the IT department, which is all about responding to the user community, but taking advantage of the systems that are in place, managing and governing those systems, ensuring that the right people have access to the right content, so security is paramount, being able to maximize the investments that they've made and deploy the right solutions out to the users. May not be able to respond to every user's needs, but to the majority of the users and the core requirements that are being specified. And these two camps are always at odds, right? The business is always trying to move forward and push things in ways to accomplish tasks that are coming at them relatively quickly. And IT is trying to move the business forward, but in a different aspect. They're trying to manage the systems, put in the right systems to help the business become that much more effective and stronger, which means that they may not be able to respond to all of the business needs, but they need a way to ensure that the business has access to the right information in a timely manner. And these two things are always interesting because having played both an IT role and a business role within my career, it's always interesting to see the trade-offs that need to happen. And we always talk about enabling the business to become much more self-service, but that also has implications for IT to make sure that the systems are reliable and responsive, because no user wants to wait 10 minutes for a query to come back based on some kind of response that they're expecting, which is in the 2 to 3 second time frame. So we need to be able to make sure that not only is the system usable, but it can be reachable by those people and information can be discovered. When we look at how our landscape has changed from both a business and IT perspective, there's a lot more things that we need to worry about. One, we all play within a global community, and our information needs to traverse outside of our walls and be respective of those other recipients getting at this information, be it partners or customers. We all have various compliance and regulatory statutes that we need to align to, and we need to be very transparent in how we provide that information and make sure it's the right information that's going out, and so on. And we're all trying to achieve to become very agile and maximize the resources that we have today, especially in today's economy where we have to do more with less and budgets are extremely tight. On the flip side, there are some interesting innovations taking place within the IT organization to allow for better resources to be used, such as virtualization, collecting various types of data constructs, be it digitally or living outside of our walls, and bringing that information in and mashing that up with internal data to provide a much more holistic view of, let's say, customers or the market opportunity, et cetera. We have a lot of hardware innovation, and cloud computing has taken on a new role with a lot more capability being provided within the cloud that allows you to run your systems both internally and externally, but then you still need to bring all of that information together and provide users with a common view of how they can access that content. And as we look at just straightforward organizational challenges, the trade-off that I talked about is how do you enable everyone to become agile and empowered to make those decisions while still moving the business forward around the strategy that the organization has set, whether it's coming from the board of directors or from market opportunities, and making sure that you're consistent in how you measure risk and rewards, and that you're investing in the right areas, you're cutting the projects that need to be cut, and you're allocating resources into various other areas that require you to become much more competitive. So these are some of the challenges that we face and some of the ways that we're looking at our business of how we can achieve more and what we need to do to be able to become much more stronger. Today's economic climate requires us to be very prudent in how we spend our resources. And while it's very easy to start cutting things, it's much more important to cut the things that are not working and invest in areas that are working. So we need to balance that investment in various other capabilities so that we emerge stronger once we move out of this current phase, which I really do hope is a current phase. Let's talk about what Microsoft has been trying to do with business intelligence, and this is our vision and strategy that is going on almost 12 years now since the release of SQL Server 7, which included the first analysis services version, which was called OLAP services. And in order for the organization, both business and IT, to be effective, we believe we need to be able to have access to all of the content that's reliable, secure, and addressable to everyone that needs it. So If you're in the business and you need access to information to determine the viability of your project, to determine how to spend resources on a campaign that you want to do, invest in various areas, you need to be able to have access to the content and the data to support your decisions, or use that as a way to collaborate with your peers on driving toward the right decision. From an IT perspective, you need to manage the systems that support this. Maybe you need to implement a data warehouse in order to aggregate the information and present it to the business in a view that's very applicable to them. And that may require investments in other areas of your business, such as you need to bring in data from multiple sources, such as you need an ETL system, you need to make information that much more real time, so you need an operational warehouse in order for information to be accessible. And you may want to deploy things like OLAP technologies as well to enable more users to access that content seamlessly. So from a Microsoft perspective, it's about balancing that capability, providing IT with a rich set of tools in order to meet the diverse needs of the business, and then enabling the business to get access to the information that they need in the right time and format that makes sense to them so that they can move the business forward. And it's both camps working together to drive a common understanding of how that business needs to evolve. And for Microsoft, it's getting this into the hands of everybody, not just a select few. And that's a real differentiator for us in how we drive awareness of business intelligence throughout the entire organization. When we think about all the things that we need to do from an IT perspective, all the different applications that we need to manage, there's a dichotomy that occurs. There are the popular applications that we need, such as a document management system, a corporate portal, an internal portal interface where users can find information. And then there are a number of other applications that the business needs that may not align with overall IT needs. For instance, I want to set up a wiki site to better communicate with my customers and create a sense of dialogue with them. I may want to set up a team site to manage a specific project. And from a Microsoft perspective, we want to ensure that we enable organizations to be able to do this on a common platform. And from an organizational point of view, it's really up to users to determine what's the best roadmap for them to deploy these technologies. But from what we want to do is be able to enable that. And when we talk about the long tail of enterprise applications, it's really about how do you manage the business requirements to enable the business to do the things that they want to do, such as set up their wikis and blogs, set up their team sites, be able to communicate across groups and collaboration, as well as manage the core systems that deriving your content management, your corporate portal, your data warehouses, and so on. And when we look at this, this is one of the key enablers for SharePoint in that it provides a common infrastructure that allows organizations to set up not only the popular applications that have a wide user presence and accessibility, but also those smaller community sites where users need access to information, be able to collaborate on their documents and meetings. And from a SharePoint perspective, this is about building it out on a single platform to enable consistent development, common security, as well as the same experience, whether it be internal or external access to users, so that the training is very minimized. It doesn't require different applications with different heuristics to be deployed. And then when we think about how business intelligence plays a role in this, well, it's really about having BI in all of these different sites. You don't create a dedicated BI portal, but you could. But you can also have business intelligence show up in your R&D community website to identify the number of bugs that you're tracking on your current product. It could be on the sales office website that talks about, how are we tracking towards our numbers? What's the information that we need in order to become much more effective and respond to customer requirements? It could be part of our corporate portal to display to our shareholders, these are the 5 KPIs that this organization is going to stand for and execute within this fiscal year, and what our responsibility is, and so on. So there's a number of ways where you can deploy business intelligence within SharePoint. And it's leveraging not only the SharePoint content, which I'll get into as SharePoint has some BI capabilities, but it's leveraging the investments that you've made in reporting services, in analysis services. It's feeding data from your data warehouse into SharePoint. It's also consolidating those other technologies that I surveyed, so allowing those technologies to work within the SharePoint environment so their web parts show up within SharePoint, which makes it easier for users to find and discover and use, and then be able to implement throughout the organization. So it's, allowing users to come together in a common interface to access the information that they need without slowing down the organization. Because you may not be ready to set up a blog or wiki infrastructure, but you have SharePoint, and it's one of the capabilities that are available within SharePoint that allows your users to then set up their own blogs and wikis. But you've governed that, you've provisioned that environment, you've made it safe for access across your user community, and you're empowering the business to set up the sites that they need in order to become effective. I think one thing that's very interesting when I talk to customers about SharePoint is the wealth of capability that SharePoint provides. So there are a number of pie slices here that I want to highlight, in that SharePoint's environment isn't just it's a portal or it's a collaboration engine, but it's actually a combination of a lot of different components coming together to provide a very holistic offering. And I would argue that when you do business intelligence, you need the other elements in order to become that much more effective in your BI implementations. For instance, looking at data without being able to collaborate on that data is not very useful. The business intelligence that relies on data warehouses, cubes, and reports requires collaboration in order to have users come together and discuss the numbers that they're looking at and capture the decisions that they've made, so that when they can go back and look at not only the history of that decision, but also how those numbers supported that decision to begin with. If the information isn't discoverable, it's very little for me to be able to identify what I need to go do, and I may be calling IT all the time in order to go, hey, I need access to a report. Do you have one? Where is it published, and so on. So search plays a key role. Content management is another key aspect that I would apply to business intelligence, because a business intelligence report, whether it's a structured report, or it's an Excel document, or it's a scorecard, needs to be managed. There's an audience for that document. There is a life cycle for that document. It may play a part as a different type of conversation that needs to be managed, so it could be part of my record system. I may want to tie workflow to that document, so that as someone goes and looks at that information, and they may need to be able to react to that information in such a way where other people need to be involved. So I may want to set up workflow to identify which users need access to that content. So all of these pieces come together to really enable the business intelligence environment. And this is, when you hear us talk about thinking bigger about BI, it's really about bringing these other elements into the conversation, so that BI plays a part of your collaboration, your content management, and your search environments, as well as part of your business processes. The big usage for BI is around re-engineering or making efficient some of your legacy processes that you have in place with the data that supports how you go about changing those processes. So tying all of this information together is extremely important. And I'll show a couple of this within the demo that I'm going to do, of how you can move through and discover this information, and how search and BI and collaboration play a key part. A common misconception around SharePoint is also that, in order for SharePoint to be effective, or users to become effective, all the content needs to be stored within SharePoint. And that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of technologies that are in SharePoint, as well as through our partner organizations, that have developed applications that live within SharePoint but pull data from other systems. And here I've just got a quick screenshot that kind of identifies some of this. Here we've got data coming in from search results, and through SharePoint Search you can not only crawl on the information inside of SharePoint, but also through federated search. So you can bring content outside of SharePoint into this to coincide with the search results. And this could be content coming in from a structured source, such as your data warehouse. Another way of accessing this content is through BDC, or the Business Data Catalog. In other words, I can set up a BDC connection to a structured source, such as a relational database or a web service. I can model how that information is to be perceived, and then I can identify how I want users to take action on that data. And through the specification, we have some partners that have actually created a read-write ability through the BDC. So not only can you pull data in, but you can give those users who have access to it the ability to write back information to the source system if that's something that's applicable to you. And I'll show you a quick example of how you can do that. You can bring in data through XML or through WSRP components so that you can bring data from outside sources in and make it part of your portal, as well as a bunch of other things. So there's a number of ways where you can bring data into SharePoint, as well as through the much more BI-centric ways, which are through reporting services, web parts, through Excel services, and so on. And there are some web parts that we have out of the box within SharePoint that allow you to access to SAP, for instance, and bring in the iView information, as well as a lot of third parties, including some of the other vendors who do business intelligence, have already deployed SharePoint web parts, so that you can push that information out through their systems through SharePoint, which makes it much easier to be discovered and to be accessed. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick demo, and I've got two demonstrations that I want to share with you today. One demonstration is an all-up SharePoint BI demo, which we walk through, and I'm going to play a role of a sales individual and managing a team, and how I kind of go through and solving a problem using business intelligence and SharePoint seamlessly together. And then the other one is how can you quickly get started with maybe just the SharePoint pieces that you have in place, and then set up in such a way where you can begin to deploy your own business intelligence environments, and then talk about how you can integrate this with other components that are existing within the Microsoft platform, including SQL Server reporting services. Okay. So you should all be able to see my desktop now. And I'm going to log into my portal. And here I've got what I've created as a sales dashboard. And as I said, I'm going to take on the role of a sales manager. And I'm responsible for a number of regions within my territory. And I've set up a portal site for my team to be able to communicate on the information that's most relevant to us. So on this sales dashboard, I have some KPIs that I use to manage how well we're doing across our different regions for the team to see. I've set up a document library which has some case studies. This is the successes that we have with our customers that I publish in here that we can use to promote the value of our capability as part of Litware. And then I've set up a team blog where the sales team can communicate with each other on some information that's important to them ad hocly, so they can update this information as they see fit. And of course, I've got some numbers to help identify how we're tracking across all these regions, and this specific time frame is for Q1. So that gives you a quick overview of what's on my dashboard. As I play the role, I notice a couple of things. One, we've got some great new case studies, which is awesome because we've got some new customer wins and promotions that are happening there. I also noticed that I've got, in the West region, my actuals and my targets are a little bit off. And this data is coming from an Excel workbook, but I'm displaying it through a thin browser experience, which is pure HTML. And I can quickly look at the data and notice that my West Coast is off. I also notice that I've got a KPI that's identifying a problem. It's red compared to my other greens and one yellow. And this is something that I might want to take action on and find out more information. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drill into this KPI, and I'm going to look at what information is coming back from my search engine on what's happening within this particular region. So here's all my West regions and all of the customers that are within that, and I see how they're being ranked and how they're performing. I also can do another type of search, which is sort on sentiment. So this is looking at all the content within the environment and how well, how is it tracking? Is it a positive tone or is it a negative tone? And I can notice that on both sentiment and customer, there seems to be a problem with Contoso. And so there seems to be some negative vibes or negative communication taking place around Contoso. So there's a lot of chatter, as well as Contoso is tracking red from a KPI perspective. And this is something that I want to find out more information on. So I'm going to jump into our CRM system. And what we've done here is we've actually created a scorecard to identify our relationship with all of our customers. So this scorecard is Litware's communication and sales and opportunities with every single customer that we have. In this case, we're looking at Contoso Aerospace as our customer. So real quick, what you see here is a scorecard with some analytical charts that help support the overall scorecard, as well as who my sales team is for Contoso Aerospace. And here we've got some presence indicators that quickly identify whether these people are online or offline, whether they're available for communication and whatnot, which is interesting because I can quickly select one of these and maybe just jump right in and call the account manager and go, hey, what's going on? I noticed that not only is the West off, but Contoso seems to be having some problems. Can you fill me in? But I want to go and do some of my own analysis here and take advantage of some of the information that's available to me. So very quickly, I'm going to filter in on all those items that are off target. And I won't get into, the value of scorecards because I believe Andy did a really good job last week in the webcast on what Performance Point Services enables and, how scorecards can help drive your business. But I think one of the key things that I like to call out about scorecards is that it is a great collaboration tool because you have accountability and addressable accountability that's right in front of you, where I can not only look at the scorecard and what those metrics mean, but I can also see who's responsible for those metrics, and I can quickly communicate with that individual to identify, why is this off and how can I be of help. So, when you have two KPIs that are related to each other with two different people who are accountable to them, and one is influencing the other either positively or negatively, you drive collaboration within your organization to have people communicate with each other to understand not only what they're doing well, but what is off and how they can help each other resolve the situation. So here, I can quickly see that not only is our revenue off based on what we've specified, but more importantly, our customer stat score and our return rate has tripled. So here, we've budgeted for a 3% return rate on the parts that we ship, but we're actually at 9% for the current quarter, and this to be way off. I also noticed that I've got a comment on this, so I can quickly select this within the browser, and I can notice that Tracy has commented that we've shipped some bad parts to Contoso this quarter, and this is affecting not only our return rate but our customer stat score. I can get more information on this KPI by selecting it, and you notice that other charts popped up that give me additional information on how our relationship with this customer is performing. Here I see our return rate is high, as well as our sales over the last few quarters is dipping, most probably impacted by the bad shipments that we've given them. So I've got some good data at my fingertips now. I understand that we've shipped some bad components to Contoso. It's hurting our relationship with them. I may want to just call Mark now and go, hey, what can I do to help him? Or, another option to me is I noticed that Mark has a My Site. And My Site is a personal site that lives within SharePoint that allows every user to input information about themselves and allow them to track what's important to them, the projects that they're working on. It shows me an organizational hierarchy of where Mark is within the company, as well as who his peers are, and a bunch of other information that he's posted up here, such as he likes skydiving. So there's some social computing aspects here, as well as a lot of business value in, hey, this is the information that's relevant to Mark. I may want to call Mark in on some of the things that I'm doing, such as the past projects, working with these companies if they're relevant to me, and so on. And this is all available through search, where I can not only search on content, but I can also search on people and find out who within my organization aligns with some of the things that I'm working on my projects or customers. One of the things that I notice on Mark's My Site is that he has a customer workspace with Contoso. So I'm just going to go to this environment, and this is an external site that Mark and the team have set up with Contoso that allows the two companies to work together, identify what projects they're working on, the status of those projects and the relationship that they've set up, as well as to share meeting minutes with the customer so that there's full transparency on their relationship. So I can see that by some personal KPIs that they've set up with the customer on some of the things that they're working on, as well as on a project view of some of the information that they're doing together. One of the things that's of interest to me is, I see that they have some shared meeting minutes with the customer, and it looks like Mark and team have addressed it. Litware has shipped some bad bearings to the customer, and we're taking the necessary actions to resolve this. So from my perspective, I've been able to identify what the problem is, identify the account team, find out more information, and specifically that these bearings are causing a strain on our relationship, but Mark and team is now on this. And I can send Mark a message at this point asking if he needs any additional assistance, or to ask that he check back with me in a couple of weeks to make sure that this information is working well with the customer and we've corrected our problem. So a very quick example on some of the things that you can, on an all-up BI story. I want to then drop into another demo and show you how you can get started today. So what I've done here is I've created a very simple dashboard page that identifies some information that's relevant to me. And I've set this up for my team. And there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. And this is all content that lives within the SharePoint environment. So if you own SharePoint, this is something you can do to quickly get started. Let me just call out some of the things that are on this page so you're aware of the individual web parts. And web parts is what we call the individual components that you can lay out on a page. And these can be items coming in from external sources or from content within SharePoint or a combination thereof. So as I look at this page, we have a simple KPI list. And these are just simple lists that are available within SharePoint, and I'll actually show you how you can create a KPI. I've got a filter that's going to actually drive these three web parts on the page. And the first two are Excel web parts that are showing content from an Excel workbook. And the last one is from a reporting services report that's currently empty because it's looking for some values. So let's go ahead and fill this filter out, and the filter is a very simple filter. It's asking me to select the fiscal year, so I'm just going to select 2003 and 2004. And this is then going to drive those three other web parts that are on the page. And as I scroll down to the reporting services report, you'll see that it's now generating the view based on the filter information that I've specified. So this shows you how you can drive content dynamically from a common filter across multiple web parts. And for this instance, I've chosen the Excel web services web parts as well as the reporting services report. With the Excel environment, I can interact with it, so I can drill down and get more information. I can format my views so I can filter on specific information. Let's say I'm just interested in Canada and France. And I can quickly get that view, so I can interact with the data like I would within the Excel workbook. So it's very specific to this pivot table that I published. Here I'm just going to focus in on components. And you see that the formatting stays the same. And then we have those KPIs. And what we can do with those KPIs is this allows users to relatively quickly create some key metrics that they want to track. It could be part of a project, part of their team status, could be related to anything that they see fit. And there's a number of ways that you can do this. You can create KPIs on data living within a SharePoint list, from data in an Excel workbook. You can bring data forward from analysis services, or you can enter information manually. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. This is our team site, and I want to track how well we're doing on our tasks. So what I'm going to do is just very seamlessly enter in information. Actually, what I'm going to do is I have this data in the SharePoint list. I'm just going to attach it to that. So instead of entering it manually, let's go against the SharePoint list. And what I'm using is the same interface, but this time I'm just going to point it at a specific data source. And this data source is my SharePoint list. The SharePoint list tracks our team tasks. So I have the team enter information on the team task list that I said, what projects are they working on, how % complete are those projects, what's the due date, and so on. I have some options that are available to me of how I want to calculate this. So I'm going to base it on a column called % complete. And I'm going to say that anything is over 50% is actually tracking well. Anything between 50 and 30 is actually needs attention, and anything under 30%, is way off track, and we need to focus on that. So very quickly, I've created a KPI on a SharePoint list that identifies how we're tracking. Here I can see we have 5 tasks, of which we're one over, so we budgeted for 4 main tasks. Of those 5 main tasks, we've got 20% are completed, and we had budgeted to have by this time 50%. And of the 5 that are remaining, we're tracking well. So we look like we're going to be doing well on our tasks. So very quickly, how you can enable users to create KPIs on key areas that are important to them. Another thing I want to mention is, how do users get started by creating a report? And there are 2 ways within the Microsoft world. There's an ability to use Report Builder, which is the ad hoc environment from reporting services, or you can use Excel. And the most common question I face with customers is, when using Excel, it's hard to get people started. So what we've done within SharePoint, and what I see here, what I've created here, is actually a data connection library, where I've specified users the ability to go against a cube on how they can create their data. And by publishing this data connection, users can select it, and what will happen is that user will then be able to launch within Excel, connected to that analysis services cube, and opened up to a pivot table. And this allows users very easily to get started creating their reports. From an IT perspective, what we've done is we've published a connection string. We've specified where the data source exists, the type of security that we're looking for in order to be passed through, whether it's single sign-on or Windows authentication or whatever the case may be. And then the cube information of what server it's located on, what view is acceptable, such as what perspective, etc. Here I've dropped into that cube, and now I can filter on specific information that I want to create my query on. I can begin to populate this with information. So here I'm just creating a report, and this is the new pivot table environment within Excel 2007. So as I go ahead and create my report, I'm just going to move things around to make it a little bit better. I want to add some conditional formatting. And one of the nice features is very easily I can just drop this to all views. So as I drill into it, all my conditional formatting continues throughout that. And of course, I want to enter a chart. We'll just select a simple bar chart for now. So very quickly, I was able to create a view, create a report off of the view within my OLAP cube. I didn't have to know how to connect to that cube and whatnot. I can now go ahead and do some further analysis, or I can share this out with my colleagues using SharePoint. And there are 2 ways to do this. I can publish the document to SharePoint, or I can publish the view to SharePoint. So why don't I go ahead and do that and show you what that looks like when you use Excel services. So here I'm pointing it to my SharePoint site. I'm going to navigate my SharePoint site and identify which document library I want to reside in. And I'm going to give it a name in this document library. Then the advantage of doing it within SharePoint is that depending on the document library I publish to, you can actually force users to enter additional information about that document. So this is the metadata that the document library is asking me about this document that I want to publish. And here it's asking me for a description of the report. If I want to save the report history so I can go back in time and take a look at this report, who the owner is, what category this falls into, etc., and what the status of that report is. And these are just some items that are available, and you can fully customize this and collect additional information. The nice thing about this is that all this information becomes searchable because it's now within SharePoint. So I can search on not only the description, but the category and this owner and status. One of the things is, though, if you want your users to be forced to do this, none of these items are mandatory, but you could make information mandatory. So you're forcing users to enter information about a document and not just publish documents at whim. So once I've published this document, I've asked to take a look at a default view. So I'm now going to be dropped into a web browser. And I'm going to take a look at my document within Excel services. And here I can see I have access to the filters as I had within the client, so I can just select on on 2003. This will drive that report. I can filter on different types of information within the report. I can sort, etc., and I can expand and collapse columns. One thing you'll notice that as I expanded value-added reseller, my chart changed. And that's probably not the behavior that I want my users to have when they interact with this report on the web, and I can actually go back and change this. One of the things that you saw when I published is the ability to use Excel services options. And what this means is that this gives you a little bit of flexibility in how you can publish the workbook and how you want users to interact with that workbook. And the options are you can publish the entire workbook, which is what I did. You can publish the sheet. So if you have a report with a workbook with multiple sheets, you may only want to publish the first or second sheet as it pertains to what your users want to interact with and protect some of the IP that exists in the other sheets. Here we only have one sheet called AdventureWorks. And then the other thing I can do is maybe I just want to publish some specific items from the workbook. So I may not be interested in the pivot table, and I just want to publish the chart. By doing so, what I'm giving access to the users is only that chart within the browser. So they can look at that information, and now I can make this as part of my dashboard, which is what I've done over here. And if we go to another view that I've created, I've used an Excel workbook to drive two different components and how I've published that. So as we look at this report, I can see that I've got a pivot table on the left and a chart. These are exactly living in the same workbook. I've just separated them out and published them individually. And this allows your users to be able to take advantage of SharePoint's capabilities and create some very dynamic dashboards on their own using Excel and a data connection. So two examples of how you can use business intelligence within SharePoint. One as an all-up Uber view, and the other one as how you can get started today with SharePoint and some integration with reporting services. So just to highlight some of the capabilities that I showed, we talked about Excel services. This is really around the ability to share information from Excel in a thin browser experience. There is an API to this, so what we've done is actually put the Excel calc engine on the server, so you have a web services API to that of how you can access content. And I've seen customers use this in a number of ways, from creating very unique custom applications such as an insurance calculator to publishing their views from a workbook and embedding that within their own applications and hiding the fact that it actually comes from an Excel workbook completely. So a couple of ways that you can do that. Some of the things you can enable your users to do is to take snapshots of the workbook away with them so they can analyze that data offline, or you can allow users to download a copy of that workbook tied back to the server. I mentioned this, I didn't get to show this, but this is SharePoint's Business Data Catalog. And what this allows you to do is create a connection to an external system, whether that's a relational database, an OLAP cube, or a web service capability. Model that information and identify how you want that to be viewed within SharePoint. By making this data available, you can use a bunch of web parts called Business Data Catalog web parts to drive information on the page, so you can have information coming from your transactional system alongside with historical information aggregated from your data warehouse to provide a complete picture. So I could look at how am I doing with my relationship with my customer, as well as what are their most current orders, what are their most current calls that they've got into our help desk, etc. So this provides you a very unique way of leveraging the line of business information you have within your ERP or other systems and exposing that within SharePoint to allow more users access to that content. We talked about KPI lists. So this was a very quick and easy way for me to create KPIs that I want to track based on my team or tied to a workbook or from data coming from a SharePoint list. If I think about what we can do with KPIs, it's really very quickly being able to summarize information that may live in another source so that I can drive some decisions or identify what's important to me and my team. So it's really around that flexibility, that self-service about bringing this information forefront and transparent within the community that I'm in. And some of you may be aware of, but I hope you're all aware of now, that we've been able to change our strategy and move Performance Point into SharePoint. So that rich scorecarding and analytical view that you saw me demo is now part of the SharePoint family. As part of coming April 1st, I should say, everyone who has SharePoint Enterprise Cal with SA will have entitled rights to Performance Point services. So it's a great motivator to get you to use SharePoint within your environment, as well as be able to drive scorecards throughout the organization. The core to the strategy change was we really wanted to make it easier for customers to be able to deploy business intelligence and use the systems that they already have in place today without having to go about and implement new systems. So this is all about the vision of us getting BI into the hands of more people and really democratizing business intelligence throughout your organization. So here you can drive accountability throughout your organization through a rich set of scorecards, whether it's conveying company strategy and vision, or it's like I did, measuring your relationship with various customers, or anything in between. Performance Point Services scorecard capability is Balanced Scorecard certified, and so that means that you can adhere to the Balanced Scorecard methodology. You can deploy it as a Six Sigma initiative, or you can create your own methodology. It has that flexibility. And the value here above the KPI list that I talked about that live in SharePoint is this is really about bringing multiple data views together, whether the information lives in a cube or a SharePoint list or a workbook, combining all those data assets together, creating rich visualizations and guided analytics on the scorecard throughout all of your organization. So, interacting with the scorecard, laying down comments, selecting different views and be able to drill into further information, really giving users a starting point to get access to the content and defining what success means within the organization. Some customer examples of how people are using SharePoint as part of their business intelligence environment. So these are all available on Microsoft.com/SharePoint under the Customer Evidence tab for business intelligence. I'll call out a couple of these which are interesting. I try to keep a diverse group here. One is Barsfield and Gore, who do a lot of contracting work within the United States. Here they use Excel and Excel services to drive their executive dashboards, providing budgeting transparency throughout their organization. So they're using Excel to drive their budgeting process and then publishing this out to SharePoint, leveraging Excel services and the workflow ability to make sure everyone who needs to know about the budget and is in compliance with the budget is made accessible to. Bank of America, who's created a Basel II compliance environment using InfoPath web forms and reporting services to collect information and distribute that as part of their compliance audit, as well as using Excel services to create, again, executive dashboards so they can mine the data and have access to all of the information that's relevant to their business, in this instance to their Basel II compliance project. And the last one I want to call out is Tallahassee Community College, who is a big SharePoint customer now, but this was a Java shop primarily focused on using open source technologies, and they made the move to SharePoint because it helped reduce their development time, as well as it provided a lot of things out of the box for their user communities to drive their portal infrastructure within the college and have more people access to the information that's required. One of the things that they've done is that, on their data warehouse, they've given users access to that information via Excel services, and allowing users within a browser environment to quickly get access to the information, be able to navigate through that information, tie that into Performance Point services to drive scorecards. So Excel documents are feeding their corporate scorecards so everyone has a consistent view of that data, and this is all driven from the data warehouse that they've created, which is a great example. And Tallahassee, being a community college, is very strapped on funds, and the switch for them to SharePoint was all about delivering value to their community at a very expedited pace, and they were able to do their corporate portal for their community in less than 3 months. To talk about what the strategy change means and how you get business intelligence now from Microsoft, it's really centered around Office, SharePoint, and SQL Server. And I know the next webcast in this series will go deeper into the value of SQL Server and the capabilities that are there. But I want to iterate that, with SharePoint and SQL Server, you leverage a lot of the common components between the two. So reporting services web parts show up in SharePoint, allow you to drive that information through a common managed environment, have it searchable and access to a lot more users. And you saw me use the filter framework to drive interactivity across not only reporting services, but Excel documents as well. And then using Excel as the primary analytical tool to help drive the ad hoc reporting requirements and more business analytical reports that users are creating within a very familiar tool. So there's no training required. We actually made it easier for people to get access to content through Excel using the data connection library that I showed, where simply clicking on a data connection dropped me into Excel. And the nice thing about that is if the data connection for whatever reason needs to change, I change it once and publish it to that area. The next time anyone opens an Excel document that is associated to that data connection, automatically they inherit the new values, which is a great way to minimize the number of changes they need to affect when you deploy different data sources, or the number of workbooks you'd have to go into and modify if you didn't use a data connection library. And then from us, to reiterate our vision, it's all about enabling people-ready business intelligence. And if you haven't seen some of the people-ready ads that we've done, I'll call out Coca-Cola, who uses business intelligence from Microsoft to help drive more users access to the information that they need in order to affect the bottom line, which is very exciting. But for us, it's all about bringing the various components together, so collaboration, content management, and search, with what IT is trying to do around developing specialized applications that unite a multitude of systems and bringing that all together in a common environment. And whether you have an Enterprise 2.0 initiative or a Web 2.0 initiative, SharePoint can be a big catalyst for you in not only leveraging the content that you have, but also the content you're thinking of creating, and enabling your users not only to access the content that they need, but doing it in a self-service manner where they can drive their own business requirements, create their own sites, and be able to share across boundaries, which is very exciting. Some next steps for you. So here is some locations to help you get started if you haven't already done so. So, investigate the benefits of SharePoint, how you can use Excel and Excel services today, and the link I've given you is to a site that gives you a quick tutorial on what those values are. How you can use scorecards in your organization today to help drive what success means for your organization or your department, and how everyone can get on the same page and delivering the same values or adhering to the same set of goals. And for more information, I invite you to check out the TechNet pages on both SharePoint and Performance Point and SQL. More about our Microsoft BI vision and strategy and capabilities at Microsoft.com/BI, and so on. And we have a lot of great examples of our customers are using the technology, as well as how you can get started and what are some of the things that you can do to roll this information out to your users. So with that, I'll just bring Phil back on to help identify how we're going to do our Q&A as I take a look at the questions that are coming in and get ready for some responses.
All right. Thanks a lot, Pedj. And ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions for Pedj, please go ahead, submit those now. Click on your Q&A menu option at the top of your screen and type your question into the field provided, then click the word ask. Please do not click the hand. That won't submit your question. You will need to click the word ask. Also, if you would like to print a PDF of these slides, they are available. Simply go to the lower right-hand corner of your client and click on the printer icon. This will allow you to print or save these locally for your convenience. And appearing just now in your slide area will be the portal to your survey. Please take a moment to click on either of those links. They will both take you to the same evaluation. Your feedback is very valuable to us and will affect future content for Momentum webcasts. So please do take a moment to fill that out before you log off today. It's very important. With that, I'm going to turn the floor back over to Pedj for any questions that have been submitted.
Great. Thanks, Phil. I want to emphasize, please take the time to fill out that survey. Your feedback to us is extremely important and helps us drive additional content for you. A couple of questions that have come in. Let me just take the first one. The question is, scorecards are created from another product. balanced scorecard offering is in Performance Point Services. And as I mentioned, we recently announced the availability of Performance Point Services as part of the SharePoint Enterprise CAL. So if you have SharePoint Enterprise and are on SA, you have access to Performance Point capability come April 1st. Before then, you can get the bits at on your MSDN subscription, but on April 1st, they'll be on the volume licensing site. And that allows you to create very rich scorecards, whether you follow a methodology or not. Going forward, as we've stated, the plan is that they will just become part of SharePoint and the Enterprise CAL offering. So when you, in the next edition of SharePoint, Performance Point will just be another service that's available to you. Another question I have, are business users using SQL Server 2008 ability to build data mart for the department, or is this something that IT is still needed for? If you're going to build any type of database, whether it's a data mart or a data warehouse or it's an OLAP queue, recommendation is that it's both an IT and a business user function. You need to bring business into that conversation in order to make sure you have the right terms and acronyms, so a data stewardship view, as well as making sure that the right sources of information are being pulled through. What we're doing with that information then is exposing it through a number of ways, such as report builder, so allowing users to create ad hoc reports, or through Excel to allow users to create information from the data warehouse, bringing that information into Excel, which I see as being the two primary tools most users are leveraging, and then sharing that information through a SharePoint environment. So creating your simple dashboards or making it part of Performance Point to drive your scorecarding capability. So there's a number of ways that you can do that. I have met a lot of users who are familiar with OLAP and are comfortable building OLAP queues, which is something that I encourage, but that is, to me, still a much more IT-centric view of how they get things done. Another question is, what about operational dashboarding? How do we get to real-time dashboards for something like manufacturing and what they would look at? We actually have a number of ways you can do that. We also have one partner, AussieSoft, that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are other partners that have done it, but I'll call out AussieSoft, where they've actually built a real-time manufacturing dashboard leveraging SharePoint and Excel services. And what they've been able to do is create a very unique way of bringing data in real-time, updating pages, and so on within an application that's specific to manufacturing. How would you do that on your own? There are a number of ways that I could encourage you to do that. Because I'm publishing content to a SharePoint site, I can put a refresh on that SharePoint site to update the content every 5 minutes, so to speak. And depending on the interval that you want, you can specify that. And then on the back end, I would have either a cube or a query run against my data source to populate that information. And you could do this through the business data catalog as well, where you're setting the incremental update to be at a frequency that's important to you of how you're capturing that data. So it could be every 5 minutes, it could be every minute, or so on, as relevant it is to pull that information forward. So there are a number of ways that we can go about doing operational dashboards within the SharePoint environment through Excel services, BDC, and so on. The question I have is, how is licensing handled for SharePoint? There are three main flavors of SharePoint, if you will. There is Windows SharePoint Services, which is a free download as long as you have the right licensing on Windows Server. There is SharePoint Standard Edition, which provides capabilities such as collaboration, portal, search, and content management. And then there's the enterprise features, which is what I highlighted today around Excel services, business processes, and forms, and now with Performance Point becoming part of the Enterprise CAL. So the Enterprise Edition of SharePoint includes those components on top of the standard. And the way you would purchase it is either standalone or as part of eCal Suite. Question is, does scorecard software come with SharePoint Server? SharePoint has two ways to do scorecarding now. There's the simple KPI lists, which are great for quickly showing KPIs off of data within SharePoint, within a workbook, or against analysis services. And then there is Performance Point Scorecard, which is now part of the SharePoint Enterprise CAL. with that, I thank you all for your participation today. It was my privilege to be with you. If you downloaded the slides, my email address is there. Please feel free to contact me. We'd love to engage with you on how you're using business intelligence with your organization, how I can help you point to additional resources, and how you're just using SharePoint. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pedge. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to make one more plea that you please do take a moment to fill out this evaluation prior to logging off today. You can access the evaluation form by either of those links that are currently posted on your slide area there. With that, I would like to extend a special thanks to our presenter today, Pedge Javaheri, for his presentation, and thank you all for joining us. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of today's webcast, and have a great day.